Let's talk now to Dr. Tony Agbons, researcher, senior lecturer at the Anglia Ruskin University in the British capital, London. Good morning to you. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, Ladi.
When last we spoke, we were talking about interesting times, and we were waiting, hopefully, that sometime this week, towards the end of this week, we would have a new British Prime Minister. It didn't take that long. By Monday, all the dice had been rolled and Rishi Sunak had emerged. But first, let me find out from you, how is he being received? His first steps on quietening down the financial and economic crisis caused by the previous government, especially as it relates to pensioners, the story about pensioners and their pensions rising in line with inflation, and then not committing to allowing wages rise with, you know, all the usual parameters that Britain has been used to, and his continued statement that tough decisions are ahead, painful decisions are ahead.
Thank you, Ladi, for your question. Like you said, we actually expected that at least by Friday, the new Prime Minister will come in. But because of the tactical move made by the 1922 Selection Committee by reducing the threshold for nomination to 100 MPs backing a candidate, I think they were able to cut short the time. And Rishi Sunak actually emerged. Former Prime Minister Boris Johnson pulled out of the race, and Penny Mordaunt, the current leader of the House of Commons, she couldn't garner the required 100 votes, so she sensibly pulled out as well. And Sunak, you know, like they call him the Prime Minister inevitable, because he should have actually been the Prime Minister since September when Liz Truss came in. But the party members chose otherwise. So he has come in. He seemed to have settled in. From the speeches he's made so far, yesterday he was at the he had his first Prime Minister's question. A bit nervous, as is expected for a new man at the helm of affairs, but he did pretty well. But like you have said, his in-tray is, I don't envy Rishi Sunak at the moment. His in-tray is a loaded desk. But he hasn't really committed to taking some drastic measures yet, and understandably so, because the budget statement that was going to be made on the 31st October has been pushed to 17th of November. I think they needed time to really think things through very properly. There's a lot of, he's coming in, to answer your question directly, has been received with mixed feelings. And I will just explain that. First, a lot of the British population believe that we should actually go into a general election. Because some people feel that he hasn't got the mandate of the British people. But on the other hand, going by the parliamentary system of government that is operated here in the United Kingdom, the other people on the other side also feel that he's got the mandate, because this party was elected for a 5-year term, and they began in 2019, and the next election should be 2024. So there's that argument and debate going on. But whether Rishi Sunak will be Prime Minister until the next general election, I think it will depend on his performance in office. Like you mentioned the pensioners issue now. Because of the rising cost of living, high level of inflation, which is already above 10% here in the UK, pensioners are really struggling. Not just pensioners, I think a large chunk of the population are struggling to make ends meet and put food on the table, heat up the home and all that. The UK have put a lock on pension rising. So we are hoping, people hope that he may remove that lock. But removing that lock is also going to trigger a lot of agitation from other sectors of the UK working population, like the rail workers have been on strike several times, even before now, postal workers, teachers in primary, secondary, and colleges. So these are all the issues on the table for Rishi Sunak. I don't envy him at all.
Now, let's look at it a bit more deeply. There is, of course, the energy crisis that he didn't create, but he's now going to have to deal with, and that's what has led to what you called the cost of living crisis and the caps that have been placed on how much households will be paying and businesses, assistance for businesses and so on. Part of what created the crisis for Liz Truss was that many in the financial markets didn't see where the money to pay for all of this was going to come from, and that's what Rishi Sunak had indicated when you said he ought to have been Prime Minister when he faced off against Liz Truss, because he said Liz Truss's plan was not viable, and so it has proved. But now he has got to deal with it, and I'm sure there are those who are saying, okay, so if this other plan was not good, what is your plan? Many have made so much. There in the picture is Suella Braverman, Home Secretary, who resigned in a huff after a shouting match with Liz Truss. And in fact, just like Rishi Sunak proved to be the downfall of Boris Johnson, Suella Braverman proved to be the final straw for Liz Truss. So I want you to look at this. Big egos in the cabinet and yet tough decisions to be made. How do you think this youngest man to be British Prime Minister will go through this?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, very young man. But I think looking at the cabinet that Rishi Sunak has assembled, I think something that is going to really bode well for him is the experience. He's brought back a lot of experienced technocrats. Dominic Raab, the former Deputy Prime Minister under Boris Johnson, is back as Deputy PM and Justice Minister. He was able to hold on to Jeremy Hunt as Chancellor. He's brought back Michael Gove as Levelling Minister. Nadine Zahawi is there, though a minister with a portfolio, but is there as party chair as well. And some others, even the Braverman you mentioned, Suella Braverman, has been brought back, although that has become a kind of albatross for Rishi Sunak. There's a lot of complaint on that. So the team he has assembled is very experienced. And one other thing that is going to go well for Rishi Sunak is that he has been Chancellor. He was Chancellor for 2 years until he resigned under Boris Johnson. So he knows the game. He comes from a banking and investment background. He understands the market. And like you said, Ladi, he actually predicted during the electionary campaign with Liz Truss that Liz was just playing to the gallery. And exactly that is what happened. So I think he's deft enough. He's got the tactical acumen. And he's been able to bring both the left and right-wing side of the party together. He's made appointments, even some junior ministers. He's been very, very thorough with his appointment. And with the party solidly supporting him, I think he will do well, except for the externalities coming from the Russia-Ukraine crisis. That, to me, is a major problem we are facing with regards to the energy crisis and the cost of living.
I'm happy you mentioned the externalities, because that's where I was going to go next. These are things that he is not in total control of and have been complicated by things that happened beforehand. There was Brexit, then COVID, and now the war in Ukraine, all coming one after the other in fairly quick succession. All that has impacted the cost of living. Then there is the place of the United Kingdom on the international stage and how it has managed to meander, particularly with this war. One of the very first phone call I understand that Rishi Sunak had was with Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine, which I guess signals something in terms of robust continuity of support for Ukraine. But then when you put that on one hand and you put it side by side with the fact that Rishi Sunak has to get the UK out of a financial hole, how much wiggle room does he have to continue that kind of support when he has to do this domestic priority agenda that is the only thing that will probably keep him in office, as you said, till 2024?
Yeah, the external factors are very, very, they are huge, and it's one of the things that led to the demise of Liz Truss as Prime Minister here. I feel that Rishi Sunak, he as a new man, he should also rally other world leaders. There have to be a solution to the Russian-Ukraine crisis. Somebody, have to pick up the gauntlet and be a statesman so that Russia and Ukraine can come to the negotiation table. So probably if he can do that, as especially with somebody British Asian background, so he has to do something magical, because it is very clear that the military option may not solve this Russian-Ukraine crisis. There's possibility of high escalation. Yesterday, we saw in the news President Putin himself, observing some nuclear drills by the Russian military. So an early resolution of this Russian-Ukraine crisis will be a masterstroke from Rishi Sunak. That is on the foreign affairs. Then domestically, something I also believe that Rishi Sunak can also look at, but I doubt if he's going to do it, because he's a staunch capitalist, is to revisit the issue of windfall tax for the energy company. Following your report before this program started, you can see that Shell Petroleum have declared massive profits. Chevron, all these oil companies are declaring massive profits. So it is something that can be visited. It shouldn't just be a closed case. We know that the elite in society, they have a way of playing the game, the political and economic game to their advantage. But if he can do something different, it's something that should be revisited, because now they are talking about raising taxes, probably again in the UK, corporation tax for businesses. So this may, have a backlash on his government, because he needs to have the people on his side. So that is what I think he should do as a masterstroke.
He's going to meet with a mix of leaders on the international stage as British Prime Minister. I mean, domestically, as you said, he's assembled a team of big egos, some technocrats, but many of those egos are likely to come to play in the coming days. These are significant political figures, the likes of Dominic Raab and Michael Gove and the likes would be in the cabinet. But on the international stage, he's going to come up against, particularly Europe, he's going to come up against the German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, and the likes of French President Emmanuel Macron, and of course the big among the big, the U.S. President Joe Biden and the others. How do you think he's going to play on that stage? Because prior to now, he hasn't really been on that stage. He's been focused mostly on Britain's domestic financial position.
Yeah, he's very, very correctly. He's relatively young in the political space. He's not very experienced, but like we always say in politics and governance, sometimes inexperience can be the genius, because he really, in his mind, he has no loyalty to anything. So I think he's very cerebral, quite intellectual. Some people have even described him as a polyglot. So his inexperience may also be to his advantage, because he's going to be really speaking without any allegiance to or friendship to anybody. But it could also be a disadvantage when he meets with some of these very experienced world leaders you have mentioned. They all need to come together and find a diplomatic solution to the military invasion of Ukraine by Russia. I really think he has to take the bull by the horn and lead that cause.
Indeed. And we'll wait to see how he does that in the coming days and months, and we wish him the best. Thank you so much, Dr. Bonds, for your time and perspective this morning on the program, as always.
Thank you, Ladi. Have a great day.
And you too.